one of the hardest things about being in the pharma space and kind of in R&D in the pharma space is that anything that we do today to change the pipeline, the impact of that ultimately ends up being felt years down the road.
I've always been in the intersection between science and technology. And then I've definitely worked at startup before and have those days where I was assembling IKEA furniture for the office and then next day going out to meet the clients and get some contracts signed.
Emma Walmsley, the CEO of GSK, actually put up a LinkedIn post, I think it was last week, with this kind of wonderful announcement that for 2024, GSK was ranked second on this Global Access to Medicines Index.
With a purpose to unite science, technology, and talent to get ahead of disease together, GSK is a global biopharma company bringing about real change. They're aiming to positively impact the health of 2.5 billion people over the next 10 years, and they need tech talent just like you to help them on this journey. Their bold ambitions for patients are reflected in new commitments to growth and a step change in performance. They prioritize innovation in vaccines and specialty medicines, maximizing the increasing opportunities to prevent and treat disease. At the heart of this is their R&D focus on the science of the immune system, human genetics, and advanced technologies, and their world-leading capabilities in vaccines and medicines development. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the DevLab Podcast, brought to you in partnership with hackajob. As you've just heard there from our introduction, we're joined by two phenomenally talented people from GSK. So firstly, Nick Peterson, who's the VP of Onyx Research Data Tech at GSK. Nick, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Phil. Excited to be here.
Excellent. And then secondly, we've got Jan Koo, who is the Senior Director of Onyx Product Management, also at GSK. Jan, welcome to the podcast yourself.
Thanks for having me here. Very excited to join.
Fantastic. So look, we're going to start with, I think good place to start in any conversation. Let's find out a bit about the both of you, your journey in technology so far, and ultimately how you ended up in your current role with GSK, specifically within the Onyx research department. So Nick, coming to you first, you started out as a mathematician and you've moved across different tech landscapes from healthcare to gaming and now leading the Onyx research data tech organization at GSK. What was it that led this kind of transition into the pharmaceutical space, and how does this role stand out from your past experiences and past roles that you've undertaken?
Yeah, well, it sounds like a much weirder journey when you say it that way than it felt like as I went through it. But, I think when I first left academia back in 2014 and went into startup land, I was at a healthcare startup, right? And I think, work can be stressful. I'm a person who throws a lot of myself into work. So feeling like I was working on a problem that really mattered was important. It's a lot easier to get up and feel stressed out about work when you're trying to make people healthier than it is when you're trying to sell them ads. So, when I left the startup and spent time in gaming, I love games. It's a great place to be, but it just didn't have that same feel to it. So when I did leave Electronic Arts, it was important to me to find something where I felt like I could make that difference again. Everybody knows somebody who's had cancer or some other serious illness that's really impacted their life, and feeling like I'm getting up every day to help those people is what keeps me going every day.
Fantastic. Excellent. Yeah, I think I have conversations every week, with people in all sorts of different organizations, and really that purpose or that meaning that you kind of bring to your work is often one of the main drivers that people have for doing what they do. And I suppose, what was it, if we go back to that initial decision to kind of leave academia and move into this world, what was it that kind of spurred that decision at that time?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest before I give the lofty answer and say that part of it is just the job market. Academia is a tough place to be, and it was a very tough place to be back in 2014. But I also, as much as I was a kind of a quote unquote pure mathematician, and I loved solving my puzzles and doing research and teaching and all of the components of that, I've always been a programmer. I've always kind of had the heart of a software engineer and kind of straddled that line. And feeling like I could do something more than solving puzzles, I think was something that really clicked with me. And so when I was given the opportunity to come out to California from the Midwest, where I'd been my entire life, and start to see what it was like to be in a startup, I got to wear absolutely every hat that I wanted to wear, right? I was a data scientist, but I was also a software engineer, and I was also hauling machines into the data center, and I was attending board meetings, and kind of got to do a really quick sampler of it. And I think that got me hooked. So there was no going back. And I think someday I may decide to go back to academia because I do love teaching. But I also find that a job like mine, I get to feel like I'm a teacher most days as well. So it kind of scratches some of that same itch.
Fantastic. Yeah, definitely sounds like you found some really meaningful work that, allows you to find that purpose and have that impact while, as you say, also experiencing all sorts of different diverse roles and opportunities and responsibilities. So yeah, sounds great. We're going to stick with you for a few more questions, then Jan will come to you. But I wanted to kind of touch on the scaling impact that you've had. So Onyx has grown significantly under your leadership from 23 to 156 people, I believe. What have been some of the key milestones and how does that rapid growth impact your team's work and the potential to drive innovation?
Absolutely. And I think to maybe underscore the point, it was 156 when we were supposed to record this a couple of weeks ago. And I think it's actually up to 161 now. So wow. It's really happening pretty quickly. I think just like tends to happen, I feel like in some ways I've just been in the right place at the right time. I think GSK's had a really strong commitment for the past half a decade and more to looking at ways that artificial intelligence could come and impact how we talk about research and discovery for new medicines and vaccines. I say that's part of what brought me to GSK to begin with. I was actually originally in that AIML organization in the R&D side of things. But, at the end of the day, the best way to make sure that you're underpinning that sort of a strategy is to build a really aggressive approach to how you think about your data, right? It's not enough for it to be sitting in a data warehouse someplace. You have to build all of the metadata, all of the ways of working, all of the ontologies and vocabularies, and all these other pieces that really start to make it come alive. And I think scientific data is a really unique opportunity to do that because it is such a real domain of discourse that there's a lot of people that do work to bring this together as an overarching field. So, when we launched Onyx, it was just last January 2023, and there were, as you said, 23 people the day that we announced. It's been really wild to watch it scale up. But I think we always have to balance that as you'd expect with the impact that we're having by scaling it. And I think that if you look at the things that we've been able to do this year with, launching our new data platform, moving all of our existing data off of our legacy systems and into that, migrating all of our users, we're in the middle of migrating all of our compute and all these other pieces into this really one cohesive ecosystem. We've actually started to see our research colleagues really feel the impact of that, which is incredibly gratifying, right? We've seen modeling approaches used this year that were literally impossible to handle scale-wise in our previous systems, and actually gone and seen, 15, 20% performance improvements as a result of that. We've seen this kind of big scattered ecosystem of all of the different systems that a research scientist needs to make their life work day by day start to consolidate down into something that feels a little bit more consistent and like a single pane of glass. And the only reason we've been able to do that is that we've got 161 and counting, I think it is now, absolutely brilliant folks who've come along for the ride, who've, listened to the story that we've told about the impact we want to have, and they've brought that passion and their kind of wonderful skills in to try to make that real. So I never was a person who thought I would be leading an organization of 160 people and growing, right? I mean, literally a year and a half ago, it was 23 people, and not all of those people even reported to me, right? We kind of assembled that group from a lot of other teams. So it's really exciting to see that turn into a kind of a big impactful thing and the culture that's just fun to be part of every day.
Fantastic. Sounds great. Yeah. And I'm sure music to the ears of anyone out there listening in, that's such an innovative and, fast-paced team are growing. And there are opportunities, down the line to get involved in, such an interesting set of projects. To go kind of full circle back to, your original point around that impact that you were having and the meaning almost that, you can take from your work when working in the healthcare sector. How has your kind of cloud-first and AI integrated approach impacted research across GSK? And then most importantly, what impact has that had on patient care and the end user and the people that you're ultimately doing this for, right?
Absolutely. And I think at the end of the day, one of the hardest things about being in the pharma space and kind of in R&D in the pharma space is that anything that we do today to change the pipeline, the impact of that ultimately ends up being felt years down the road, right? And so we're still very much in that process of getting to a place where we can point to something and say like, hey, we were part of the team that ultimately led to that medication being out there now, or that vaccine being out there now. But at the same time, I think what we are definitely starting to see is we're able to get people the data that they need a lot faster than they could get it before. We're getting to a place where they don't have to understand nearly so much of the technical detail about our ecosystem to do it. So for instance, famously, when we were getting ready to launch the Onyx organization, I was in a meeting with a bunch of SVPs and VPs from the R&D organization organization, talking about some data system or another that we were looking at trying to bring in. And all the questions that I was getting were about, well, but my team has data in these 5 systems, and today they move it from there to there, and they do, they had this whole map in their heads up at the SVP level of what the flow of that data actually was. And I think we're starting to get to a place now where actually our research colleagues know, no, the data's in Onyx. My ways of working are getting attached to Onyx. All of this is kind of coming together in that one place. So we definitely are starting to see sort of the productivity impacts on the research side that we would hope to have through the kind of ecosystem that we're building. And I think that's only going to continue, right? We're just started. We've got all kinds of exciting plans for next year on new tools that we're going to be building in the imaging space and antigens and RNA and all these other pieces that are going to really help us to support our R&D scientists in getting ahead of disease.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Nick. Yeah, some really fascinating insights there. And we'll come back to you later with a few more questions more broadly around life at GSK. But Jan, thank you for waiting super patiently there. We'd love to find out a bit about you now and a bit about your journey initially into technology. So I believe your background started out in computational biology and obviously had a lot of experience within startups. How has working at GSK added a new dimension to your career? And what excites you about being at the intersection between tech and healthcare?
Yeah, thank you, Bill. Happy to share. My journey to GSK/Onyx is probably a bit more normal compared to Nick's, but definitely made some detour along the journey. I started out as a computational biologist, and back in graduate school, I was working with colleagues on various research questions, right? Trying to understand the mechanism, what genes are causing autism, for example, trying to figure out the biological mechanism that leads to cancer and help the bench biologists to come up with the right hypotheses and the design experiment to test their hypotheses. And along the way, developed machine learning models and even like software to help biologists understand their data. So I guess I've always been in the intersection between science and technology. And then I've definitely worked at startup before and have those days where I was assembling IKEA furniture for the office, and then next day going out to meet the clients and get some contracts signed. So I think what ultimately leads me to joining GSK is about the mission and the scale of the impact we're going to bring to GSK's R&D. So like as Nick mentioned, we're already in the process of getting rid of these fragmented legacy systems that really creates a lot of headache for our scientists to get access to their data. It slows them down. This is a typical sort of a data science problem where people are spending 80% of the time wrangling with the data, figuring out where to find them, how to access them, where what we're trying to build is research data on our platform and giving people the right tools and quick access to the data so they can jumpstart their projects. Even though the impact will not be seen probably several years down the line, but we're seeing progress that people are making. So instead of waiting for days to get enough compute power, now they can wait for a couple minutes and get the scalable compute resources on the cloud. I think when you add those things together, it does make a meaningful impact and move the needle little by little that people can actually see the impact on their day-to-day job.
Yeah, for sure. Even if the end result isn't for a kind of 7-year horizon, that horizon stops getting further away the sooner you do that work, right? So yeah, incredible to hear from you on this as well. Just to focus in again on the kind of startup side of things. So within GSK, the Onyx research data team combines the innovative feel of a startup with the stability of a larger organization. As someone, like yourself, who's come from that startup background, how do you feel this model benefits the teams and makes it a unique place to work?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Phil. So I think one thing I would like to highlight, and if this is the only thing you take from me today, that's probably the unique advantage of our operating model, right? So you can enjoy the benefit from both sides. You enjoy the resources and stability from a large pharmaceutical company, but culture within the team is very innovative. We try really hard to keep that startup culture. We encourage people to innovate, to iterate quickly, and also to debate quite intensely so that we can get all these creative ideas out, right? Instead of like people are, sometimes at a large corporation, like stumble upon some kind of things they Anyway, so I think we also assembled the team quite intentionally. We encourage diversity. We got folks from all kinds of background expertise. And one thing I learned is one of my newest team member has been a plumber before. That's not some background you typically expect. But that's a kind of like the unique culture and encourage for innovation that we try really hard to keep for the team.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Yeah, definitely sounds like you're combining the best of both worlds. And again, similar to the context that Nick was given earlier, I think for anyone out there listening in that is thinking about that next opportunity, whether with Onyx or with the wider GSK organization, definitely sounds like a fantastic place to be involved in. Again, when thinking about, bringing together those diverse opinions, having that impact and working on, a really exciting array of projects and products.
Phil, could I maybe just add one more thing? I think speaking to the cultural aspect, we definitely have a lot of engineering team members that they come to join Onyx because they want to make that impact, right? Mm-hmm. Like exactly as Nick mentioned, software engineers, they can work in any industry, but thinking about impact of their work, we have engineers from all these top-notch tech companies wanting to join Onyx because they want to put their work into good, meaningful impact results that directly impact the patients. We heard this over and over again. So for engineers that are out there looking for impact, we provide the right environment for you to come in to really deliver some meaningful product that will help patients. And you will be surrounded by folks with the same exactly mentality. So the team is very mission driven. I think that helps a lot when we're dealing with some difficulties or blockers and here and there. But typically the team think about our mission, think about our collective goals, and you see the team start to be you just work with each other and form a really strong collaboration across the board. I think that's something we really want to let folks know. Another aspect is sort of like the broader ecosystem partnership we're building within GSK. Onyx does not exist alone, right? We have strong partnership with our, for example, security offices. Nick, maybe I'm stealing your line, but with our compliance and quality department, with our enterprise technology groups, and even with our procurement department, with our finance department, so that the team can operate highly efficiently with the right partners lined up and also be cognizant about their processes. So we're following their guidance because we're in a very heavily regulated space.
Fantastic. You can steal away. Couldn't have said it better.
Absolutely.
Learn from you.
No, fantastic. Yeah. And I think, really important to touch on that side of things as well. Sometimes in these conversations, the supportive nature of a business and the way that different departments are linked together and join those dots together and support each other can sometimes be lost. So no, I think fantastic to hear, directly from you just on how much focus there is within the organization on making sure that those connections are there. Before we jump into some more general questions around GSK, around kind of early careers and career diversity and things like that, is there anything either of you wanted to touch on relating more specifically to Onyx and the projects that we didn't get the chance to cover in the previous questions?
Oh, I think we got through quite a lot of the high points there. I think, just to call it out, I guess maybe a couple of things that occur to me, right? I think one is we've done I think a really good job of trying to get the message out about what Onyx is like to work in and some of these other points. But I think that one of the most important things to kind of continue Jan's message there on partnership is the support that we have from our partners in the research and kind of the broader R&D organization. I think when you think of technology group, major pharma, you probably think of a more traditional IT sort of, very transactional sort of a setup. And I think in a lot of ways, we're really trying to view ourselves, and I think that our partners have increasingly started to view us as being the engineering arm of drug discovery, right? And I think that that's just an incredibly exciting place to be. And I think that it speaks really highly of the people that we have and the culture that we've tried to build, both in R&D and in our kind of R&D technology organization. So just, it's a really exciting time to be here. And I think just huge amount of continuing growth and evolution and really impactful work to do. Hopefully the excitement comes across.
Yeah. For sure it does. And that's a great segue, to be honest, into our next question, because I wanted to find out a little bit more around the early talent and internship programs that you have. A lot of those people listening in to today's episode perhaps are at that early stage in their career where they're thinking about that first job after university or college or whatever it might be. So I don't know who wants to jump in on this first. Maybe if you could detail a little bit more about how those schemes work, because I'm sure, a lot of people are excited by this opportunity.
Absolutely. So I think GSK writ large has a huge number of kind of very well-established programs for early talent. I think what I want to focus in on the most, though, is that within Onyx, we've actually launched our own internship program. Last summer was our inaugural class. So, Jan and I have both spent time out in other tech sectors. And I think one of the things that you really see tech taking advantage of year over year are these summer internship programs for university students, right? University students or grad students, sort of whatever level of education. But when I was in the gaming industry, that was always actually our strongest mechanism of recruitment, right? We had these wonderful early talent pipelines that were built by having great folks come spend a summer with us or spend a few summers with us, depending on where they were in their journey, and then transition into full-time careers with us after the fact. And, you could see how much they got out of the opportunity there because it was such a well-established program that then the C-suite would be involved and, come and talk to them about their projects and do all these other sorts of things. Tell them about the business, tell them about the industry. And we really wanted to try to bring that same level of excitement and education and energy into our space here in Onyx. So last year, we had the great fortune of having 5 wonderful interns, all US based for that first round of it, some in Boston, some in Seattle, some in San Francisco, but working on real projects and kind of working day by day with data engineers, with product managers, with kind of different folks from across our organization to learn what it was like to do real impactful work day by day. And they did some awesome stuff. And actually, I think one of the best things that came out of that whole thing was we set them up actually as almost a project team. So we had a product management intern working on speccing things out. We had somebody from the metadata team who was working on building up the metadata models. We had data engineers delivering into those models. So it was a kind of a really cool experience. This summer, we're looking to expand that program out to include the UK as well. So for folks who are interested, we can definitely, you can search and find some more information on that. We're getting ready to post what those roles are going to be just over the next month or two here, and really excited that we can kind of take that opportunity to expand it. So, I think it was a really rewarding experience for the students. I think we got really positive feedback from all of them. Almost all of them want to come and join us full time. So we're kind of working out to make all of that happen and land people as they finish with their degrees this year, hoping that can turn into an awesome thing for us moving forward. Jan, you had a couple of those folks actually in your team. Is there anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, maybe just one thing to add is the team actually, their mentor actually really value their output. I think that's because we put a lot of thought into the projects that we want these interns to work on. These are real projects. These are things that we actually actively look at when we report our status and accomplishment. And I think that give the interns strong motivation to do a good job, to learn as fast as they can, and they see their contribution to the team. I think that's a very immersive internship experience, I would say. And we try to co-locate them with their mentors so they have these in-person mentorship so that they can benefit the most from the team. Maybe one more thing I want to add is Phil, back to your question about the early talents. I think getting people in the door is only step one, right? We also very thoughtful about our onboarding experience, setting people up for success from a very early on. We have intentionally trying to, for example, make these early talents visible across the board. We have internal meetings that we actually seek out for more junior folks to talk about showcase their code, talk about their product demo, and we try to bring junior engineers to speak to, get them more exposure to some of the customers so they also understand the broader context of the project they work on.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And really refreshing to hear. I couldn't agree more, Nick. I think early careers can be one of, if not the most impactful levers you can pull when it comes to your long-term hiring. If you can get really smart, talented, bought-in, engaged people at that early stage in their career and watch them grow with you, particularly when we think about skills gaps and, certain tools and frameworks and different technologies that might actually be quite scarce in the market, actually being able to build out that talent pool yourself and get people that are really bought into your mission from an early stage is super, super important. And I think it's great to hear from both of you how engaged the business clearly is in enabling these internships, these early careers programs, not just with the interns and the early careers folks themselves, but with more senior people across the business as well, getting everyone bought into how important this is to really support people at the start of their career. So yeah, really refreshing, really, really nice to hear.
Always comes back to the teaching mission.
Yeah. There we go. Now we know. Now we know what's really kind of keeping you grip there. Getting to have your cake and eat it, I suppose. If we look at the academia and the commercial world, fantastic. Look, next question I wanted to focus on was around, I guess, career diversity and diversity within the business. And I think we've already touched on it slightly in previous answers, and the importance of bringing in diverse opinions to create a fully formed idea. But some people out there may not see pharma as an obvious career choice. How do you help to bridge that gap? How do you help to kind of break down that perception for those sorts of people that may not think a career in pharma or in technology even is the right kind of route for them?
Yeah, I think, to start with, what I would say is that it was never an obvious career for me. And so I think, even if you look at my background, right, so I did a PhD in math. I did very little biology or chemistry. I always focused on physics because that felt like it was taking me as little away from my math mission as I could get. And so kind of coming into this space, I think at first it was daunting when I first started half a decade ago, because, I'm speaking to these brilliant scientists every day who have PhDs and a huge amount of academic work and a huge amount of industry work as well into the space, right? They know it very deeply. They're the experts in their field. But I think that actually the thing about that is, and this is what takes me back to what I loved about academia, other people's expertise is my favorite thing. It's an opportunity to go and learn some of the biology, learn some of the chemistry, kind of understand how all of these things fit together with human health and what we see in the clinic, all of that, right? So I would encourage people to actually view that as being an educational opportunity rather than it being a limitation or a reason not to come. And I think the other piece of it is just that we have tried really hard to make this a place in Onyx that appeals to the broader set of folks from the software and data community, right? A lot of our team members come in from startups in kind of pure tech or fintech or these other places, as well as from biotech or from pharma backgrounds. And I think that it really shows in the way that we address problems, right? We're trying to build something that I think fundamentally pharma hasn't built before in quite the way that we're trying to do it. And you can't do that if you have just the same people who have been solving problems historically doing it. So I really value that we bring in all of those kind of very diverse backgrounds, very diverse perspectives, and can use that to turn this into something that I don't think it could have been otherwise.
Fantastic. Another commitment that GSK has is to using technology for greater impact in a more broad sense, obviously specifically in improving the lives of patients, across the globe. What specific tech initiatives are currently helping improve the accessibility and the quality of treatments for patients worldwide, and that really kind of grip you or really get you excited?
Absolutely. I think, so Emma Walmsley, the CEO of GSK, actually put up a LinkedIn post, I think it was last week, with this kind of wonderful announcement that for 2024, GSK was ranked second on this global access to medicines index, which essentially looks at how different major pharma companies as organizations are, through their R&D efforts, through kind of how they're making medications available, through these other components, helping especially low and middle income countries with major disease factors that are kind of really prevalent in a lot of these areas. And actually, every year since that index has been established, which was I think in 2008, GSK's either been first or second on that list, right? So as a company, that's a mission I think that's incredibly close to our hearts and something that every person at GSK is a part of. I think with us being in the R&D side, right, we're definitely a lot earlier in the process than where we start to see getting medications out into hands or getting vaccines out into arms. But everything that we do is ultimately intended to have exactly that impact, right? It's how are we bringing together the data story, the technology story, the artificial intelligence story with our partners alongside the scientific story to get to a place where the amount of time and energy that's required to find the medication for the next big condition that's where it's needed is drastically reduced. So it's all about how do we devise entirely new data and prediction driven ways of working for R&D that'll ultimately make it so that, next time that we have this conversation, I don't have to say, well, we're still several years away. We'll start to see these things happening in much, much faster turnaround times.
Awesome. Thanks, Nick. Jan, on your side of things, anything else you'd like to highlight?
Yeah, maybe just give one or two concrete examples, even though we're in the R&D space. But one of the major product line for GSK is vaccines. And for example, vaccine can be very seasonal. What we're trying to do is to help our vaccine scientists to monitor the evolution of these seasonal flu strains, for example, so that we can get ahead of the seasonal breakout and design the vaccines that are specifically for catch that seasonal strain. And we're doing this by sort of like leveraging the data architecture we have set up, but also have specific models to enable scientists to make that predictions faster. And the turnaround time we see is actually quite good. I probably won't put the specific numbers there, but we see our vaccine colleagues get ahead of this strain so they can start to design the proper vaccines, test it out, and put it at patients' hands to capture that breakout in time.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah, and great to hear the practicalities and that underpin the work that you're doing, right? That's the end result that everyone's kind of building towards. So no, thank you so much, Jan. Awesome. That brings us to the end of the discussion that we have today. Is there anything else from either of you that we didn't get the chance to cover that you did just want to highlight before we wrap up today's conversation?
Jan, may we start with you?
Yeah, I think maybe speaking from my own experience, in terms of like getting to know GSK, actually take the effort to apply for the job and take all the interview journey and eventually land in here. I want to maybe say to them, for folks who is interested out there, that we also try to design our interview process simple and smooth, so that we don't, we have we assemble the right people to talk to you. These are the future stakeholders, the people you'll be working with day to day. And we also simplify the interview process to be more similar to folks would typically do in the tech industry, for example, because we're looking into the talent pool here, and we really want to get the best talent to join our team. So you see the amount of thoughts that we put in our process, from all of our recruiting effort, getting the word out there, identify the right people, and also bring them on board, and all the way until they settled in. Right? We do value the talent very much, and then I think we care about the long-term success of our team members. Right? Typically at pharma, you will see folks stay at a company for many years. 5, 10, 20, even 30 years. But for us, we also care about people's success, even they decide to leave Onyx or leave GSK. We treat them as our alumni. We support their career growth. We support their development. I think it's pretty rare to see like a senior leaders putting so much effort into investing people's long-term success.
Yeah, definitely. Breath of fresh air. It's really, really nice to hear. Nick?
Yeah, I think just, as alluded to earlier, I've probably had a very strange path through my career. As you can tell, I'm not a person who's actually built a plan around it. Something interesting pops up and I've gone off and done it. I have no idea what the next step in my career will be after this. Hopefully that's still a long way away. But I think what I am confident in is that when I look back on my career 10, 15 years down the line, I don't think I'll have ever had an opportunity kind of as unique as the one that's popped up here with building Onyx and assembling this team and the sort of impact that we're hoping to have. Right? Just all the ingredients are there. The senior leader buy-in, the kind of the right moment for the technology, the right moment for artificial intelligence, the kind of right moment for how we talk about data. And I think the set of people that we've already brought into it themselves are a really unique opportunity to work with such an amazing group. So, it's honestly been probably the most impactful few years of my career, and I think it'll continue to be. And if folks out there are hearing that and they want to have that sort of impact or want to have that sort of unique moment, please reach out, right? We're continuing to hire. We've got a lot of open roles to fill this year and next year, and we'd love to have you come and join the team.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And look, you've done a great job of the outro for me there. I don't think I could put either of those points any better. All I will just encourage you to do is check the podcast description. We'll ensure that all relevant links are captured, which detail how you can get in touch with Onyx, GSK more broadly, and see if this is the next step in your career to have that impact, to grow with a business that really supports you, and work in an environment where you're really having that daily impact on people's lives worldwide. So no, thank you so much, Nick. Thank you so much, Jan. Thanks for joining us today. It's been a great episode. Thank you, as always, to everyone out there listening in to another episode of the DevLab Podcast.
Thank you so much, Phil.
Thanks for having us, Phil.